There comes a moment on the spiritual path when life begins to feel different. Not lighter, not heavier, but somehow more spacious. As if something inside you has shifted from being a character to being the one who sees the character. From being inside the story blindly to watching the story with quiet clarity. This is the beginning of recognizing life for what it truly is. A divine play. Not a punishment, not a maze, not a battle to win, not a burden to carry, but a play of consciousness discovering itself. Most people never experience this shift. They live trapped inside the drama, inside the emotion, inside the roles they were taught to play. They live life the way an actor might live if they forgot they were on a stage. Every line becomes personal. Every scene becomes life or death. Every conflict becomes unbearable. Every mistake becomes a wound. When you forget you're in a divine play, you suffer. But awakening allows you to step back, to breathe, to soften, to see the script from a wider angle. You begin to recognize that everything unfolding, every challenge, every joy, every loss, every moment, is part of a larger design meant to awaken awareness within you. Swami Radha taught, life is the school, awareness is the lesson. You are both the student and the witness. And that is the essence of the divine play. You are not just the one acting. You are the one observing the acting. You are the consciousness behind the character. When you begin living from this awareness, everything changes. The conflicts that once felt devastating now feel like temporary scenes in a much larger story. The emotions that once overwhelmed you now pass through you like weather. The disappointments that once defined you now become openings for transformation. The victories you once chased now feel like experiences rather than identities. This shift doesn't make life easier. It makes life clearer, more intentional, more sacred. It teaches you to stop gripping so tightly to the illusions your mind creates. It teaches you to stop believing every fearful thought. It teaches you to stop fighting the natural rhythms of the universe. You begin to walk with awareness. Awareness makes you curious instead of reactive, calm instead of anxious, observant instead of overwhelmed, intentional instead of impulsive. You start asking different questions. Instead of why is this happening to me, you begin asking, what is this teaching me? What is this revealing in me? What truth is this moment showing me? These questions change everything. Because life is not happening to you. Life is happening through you. You start to see how every moment is purposeful. How every encounter carries a message. How every challenge is a teacher. How every emotion is a doorway. You start seeing synchronicities, patterns, signs, intuitive nudges, quiet whispers of guidance you once ignored. They were always there. You just couldn't hear them through the noise. But when you recognize life as a divine play, the noise begins to fade. You stop acting blindly and start living consciously. You begin understanding that your character, your name, your story, your identity, is not the whole truth of who you are. It is the costume you wear for this chapter of your soul's evolution. Behind the costume is awareness, the witness, the eternal presence that watches everything unfold without being harmed by any of it. This realization brings a strange and beautiful freedom. You become less afraid of the unknown, less controlled by fear, less reactive to others' behavior, less attached to outcomes. You start playing your role with grace. Not out of pressure, but out of understanding. You become like an actor who knows the scene is temporary, yet performs it with full presence. You engage with life wholeheartedly, but without losing yourself in it. Awareness gives you space. Space to breathe, space to choose, space to pause before you react, space to understand before you respond, space to see the bigger picture. And in that space, something extraordinary happens. Your life stops feeling chaotic. It becomes sacred. Even the difficulties become sacred. Even the heartbreaks become sacred. Even the losses become sacred. Because you sense the deeper intelligence moving through everything. Life stops being random. It becomes intentional. It becomes symbolic. It becomes alive. You begin noticing how certain situations keep repeating until you learn their lesson. How certain people enter your life to awaken something in you. How certain pains return to show you where you are still asleep. Life is not punishing you. Life is teaching you. Life is shaping you. Life is refining you. Life is preparing you. Everything, even the things that feel unfair, becomes part of the divine choreography. And the more conscious you become, the more gracefully you begin to move with it. You stop forcing. You stop chasing. You stop demanding. You stop resisting. You begin to trust. Trust that every closed door is protection. Trust that every delay is alignment. Trust that every ending is a beginning. Trust that every challenge is a teacher. Trust that every moment is purposeful. And then you begin to discover the deeper truth. The divine play is not trying to break you. It is trying to wake you. Every scene you've lived, every heartbreak, every disappointment, every loss, every joy, every meeting, every beginning, every ending, has brought you closer to the awareness you are touching now. You were never off the path. You were being shaped. You were being guided. You were being prepared. You begin to realize something profound. You don't have to control the play. You only have to be awake within it. This awakening softens your grip on life. You stop reaching for control and reach for awareness instead. You become more present, more patient, more intuitive, more compassionate, more aligned. Life begins to move through you. Rather than pulling you around like a puppet, you act with intention. You speak with clarity. You listen deeply. You respond with awareness. And slowly, your entire experience of life transforms. Nothing outside you changes, but your relationship to life does. You no longer resist reality. You flow with it. You dance with it. You allow it. You start to feel that you are exactly where you need to be, not by accident, but by design. And this feeling, this quiet, steady trust, is the first doorway into walking life with awareness. But the deeper truth, the sacred truth Swami Radha pointed toward, is still waiting to unfold. As awareness deepens, you begin to see the next truth of the divine play. The ego is the actor. Awareness is the witness. Your soul is the playwright. Your ego reacts to life. Your awareness observes life. Your soul designs life. Most people live entirely from the ego, from fear, from insecurity, from habits, from unconscious conditioning, from stories they inherited rather than chose. The ego tries to control the script. It tries to rewrite scenes. It tries to skip lessons. It tries to avoid discomfort. It tries to make everything predictable, safe, familiar. But in the divine play, the ego is not in charge. Life will give you the exact moments you need to awaken the parts of you that are still asleep. Not the moments you prefer. Not the moments that make you comfortable. The moments you need. And this is where resistance arises. Because the ego prefers familiarity over evolution. It prefers the known over the true. It prefers comfort over awakening. So every time life moves you toward growth, the ego tries to pull you back. Every time an old identity begins to fall away, the ego clings to it tighter. Every time awareness expands, the ego becomes afraid. This is not a mistake. This is the tension every soul must move through to gain true maturity. In the divine play, the ego is not the enemy. It is the tool that reveals where you are still unconscious. When you walk with awareness, you no longer fight the ego. You learn from it. When fear arises, you observe it. When anger rises, you witness it. When insecurity rises, you breathe through it. When old patterns return, you watch them without collapsing into them. You stop saying, "I am angry," or "I am afraid," and start saying, "Anger is passing through me. Fear is moving through my system. Old conditioning is surfacing. This is a scene, not my identity." This is how the divine play becomes a path to freedom. Awareness allows you to step out of the character and become the one who chooses the next movement consciously. You begin to take responsibility for your part in every scene, for your emotional reactions, for your energetic responses, for the way you interpret experiences. You begin experiencing the world without blaming it, without collapsing into it, without losing your center. You become someone who can feel deeply without drowning, who can experience pain without becoming it, who can witness challenges without being shattered by them, who can move through uncertainty without losing clarity, who can listen to others without absorbing their chaos. This is maturity. This is spiritual adulthood. Awareness makes you emotionally stable, mentally spacious, energetically clean. You stop entering scenes unconsciously and start entering them intentionally. What am I bringing into this moment? What energy am I adding? What role am I choosing? What truth am I expressing? What lesson is unfolding here? What does this moment require of me? These questions make your presence powerful, not because you dominate life, but because you align with it. Awareness gives you permission to stop performing for the world and start living for the soul. You stop pretending. You stop pleasing. You stop forcing. You stop explaining yourself to people who are still asleep in their own script. You stop carrying the weight of how others see you. You stop shrinking yourself to be understood. You stop trying to be liked. You begin to play your role with authenticity instead of approval. This is when people begin to notice something in you. A stillness, a clarity, a subtle inner radiance. Not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because you're no longer trying to be anything else. Awareness frees you from the illusion that your worth depends on external validation. You realize that your value does not come from performance, but from presence. In this freedom, you begin seeing life as a dance of possibilities rather than a prison of expectations. You relax into the flow. You release the rigidity. You listen to the deeper movement beneath everything. And then something sacred happens. Life starts speaking to you, not in words, not in signs you must decode anxiously, but in a quiet intelligence that rises from within. You begin to feel what is right for you without having to overthink. You begin to sense when a chapter is ending, even before the signs appear. You begin to trust the intuitive pull towards certain people, certain places, certain choices. You begin to feel guided not by logic, but by inner knowing. This is the heart of divine play. The script is not written outside you. It is written through you. Your awareness is the doorway through which the soul communicates. The more awake you become, the more clearly you hear it. You begin to see why certain people entered your life, not randomly, but with purpose. Some came to awaken your strength. Some came to teach patience. Some came to reflect your unhealed parts. Some came to open your heart. Some came to close a chapter. Some came to show you what you no longer need. Some came to show you who you truly are. Every interaction becomes a message. Every relationship becomes a mirror. Every ending becomes a redirection. Every loss becomes a shedding. Every joy becomes a reminder. Every challenge becomes a teacher. Life becomes intimate, alive, symbolic, vivid, full of meaning. You begin to see that nothing has ever been random, not even the painful parts, especially not the painful parts. Awareness reveals that the universe has been shaping you all along, through contrast, through discomfort, through synchronicities, through love, through loss, through silence. This is the play. And now you are awake enough to move through it consciously. When you walk through life with awareness, you don't avoid difficulty. You meet it with presence. You don't suppress emotion. You let it flow without attachment. You don't fear uncertainty. You open to it with curiosity. You don't cling to identity. You allow it to evolve. You walk like someone who knows they are not just the actor. They are the awareness behind the actor. And with this realization comes the final teaching of the divine play. Your role is temporary, but your awareness is eternal. Your character will change. Your circumstances will change. Your relationships will shift. Your body will age. Your story will evolve. But your awareness, the witness behind your eyes, remains untouched. When you live from this awareness, fear loses its grip on you. Death loses its sting. Loss loses its meaning. Failure loses its power. Time loses its urgency. The world loses its ability to control you. You begin to walk differently, more gently, more wisely, more consciously, more freely. Life becomes a sacred experience rather than a survival battle. You learn to bow to each moment instead of trying to control it. You learn to participate without getting trapped. You learn to feel without being consumed. You learn to love without possessing. You learn to grow without resisting. You walk the divine play with the awareness of someone who knows the truth. The purpose of life is not to win, but to awaken. This is the freedom the soul has been leading you toward since the beginning, where you live your scenes fully, but without fear, where you engage with life deeply, but without clinging, where you love wholeheartedly, but without losing yourself, where you walk through change, but without collapsing, where you trust the unfolding, even when you don't understand it, because you understand the truth. Swami Radha devoted her life to teaching. Life is a divine play, and awareness is how you walk it with grace.